In today's tutorial, I'm going to focus on intarsia in the round. Sometimes when you want to work two different colors but you don't want to have a ton of floats in the back of your work, you'll work intarsia, which means you're working two colors, but instead of having floats that go across the back, you have two linked colors. And you can see here, I'll move this inside out. This is the color block cowl, and you can see inside out it looks almost exactly the same as it does when it's inside right. You'll also notice that this doesn't have an all one color cuff, but instead the intarsia work starts at the bottom row. So when you're casting on, you cast on a handful of these dark green stitches and then a whole bunch of the light green stitches. Today I'm going to show you how to start that cast on. It's worked in the flat for the first tiny bit, and then you connect it together with a technique I call make provisional loop. So today I'm going to cover making provisional loop to start your intarsia in the round project. So here I have my two colors. I have my main color and my contrast color. So I'm going to call this green one my main color and light green my contrast color. We need to cast on 24 with our main color. So I'll do that now. In this case, your cast on technique doesn't matter. It's cast on of your choice. Okay, and 24. So we have 24 stitches on this side of the needle. Next, because we're going to be working with two colors and we have to line up the working yarn in the right direction, we're just going to sneak over to the other side of our circular needle. And here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cast on the stitches required for the other color. In this case, it's 132 stitches. So I'm going to take quite a bit of yarn and I'll cast on 132 stitches of the light green. Okay, and here we are ending the cast on for the light green. So a few more of those stitches. I've worked all the way around. I have 132 stitches on my needle. You might have more or less if you're adjusting it, but here we are. So I have my light green on this half of the needle, and then still on the other half I have my dark green that I worked earlier. We're not going to join to work in the round yet. So when the cast on is finished, we'll arrange it so that the 24 main color stitches are on the left and the 132 contrast color stitches are on the right. You'll see they're not connected here. There's a space between them, and they're not connected here yet. What I'll do is I'll lay the working contrast color yarn, so that's this one, if you can see it. It's this ball of yarn. This is my working yarn, not my tail. Hold the tail out of the way. I'll lay this working yarn over the main color working yarn. That's this one. Such that when I start to stitch with the main color, the contrast color yarn is locked together. That's the first place where they'll start to become joined. So I'm going to get my main color back here where it belongs. I've laid this contrast color over the main color, and then as you can see, when I start to do this first stitch, it's going to be locked in there. So this one works in a knit 3 purl 3 rib pattern, so we'll just stick with that. I'll knit 3 and then I'll show you here. Now this is locked. It's not locked in tightly yet because it's just a small loop holding it in, but when we come back around and work it, this will be a nice tight lock, just like you see on the back side of the cowl pattern when I showed it to you. So then we'll work across here in our knit 3 purl 3 pattern until we get to the end of the main color. When you work intarsia in the round this way, what you'll do is you'll end up working a partial round in one direction. You'll make a provisional loop, and then you'll turn around and work a second row back over where you just worked the first. So it'll become more clear in a second, but what happens is that at the end of working instruction, you'll actually have two full rounds of knitted work. Great, so we finished our last 3 purl stitches of the main color, and you'll see we're not connected yet to the contrast color. We just at the end here, and you'll see there's no working yarn. This is where the turn, we'll turn our work, so now we're working on the back side, and make provisional loop instructions come in. So here's our contrast color. It says make provisional loop with contrast color. So all we're doing there is, once again, we're laying the contrast color over the main color, like this, so that they're crossed. And we're gonna leave kind of a loop dangling so that we have lots of extra space to work with that, and you'll see why in a moment. And then we work back over the stitches we just did. So we have turned, and we're going back now on the main color. I'll work the first 3 stitches. Again, it's in the opposite of the knit 3, purl 3 pattern, since we're working on the wrong side now. And here you'll see we have the contrast color. It's not yet connected yet with the other side, but because of the provisional loop, when we work our back around, when we snug it tight, it will be connected. We're going to work all the way around in our knit 3, purl 3 pattern until we get to the end of the main color again, or I should say the beginning of the main color. Great, and as I finish these last few stitches of my main color, you'll remember that when we started, we laid this color, the contrast color, over to connect them. So we'll slide this close so that there's no additional, see this loop here, we don't want that. We're gonna slide that shut. And now we have a contrast color to work with. But you'll notice, so I'm gonna move this out of the way. You notice the contrast color is connected here where we'll start our work and work around, but it's still also connected here at the loop. And what's going to happen is, as I knit, I can pull this to have more to work around, and when we come to this end, we'll check to make sure that there are no strings sort of inside the loop, and then we'll snug it shut. So this is the point where we've made the provisional loop, we worked back, and now we're going to work the contrast color in the same knit 3, purl 3. I'm laying the main color over so they're locked together, and I'll start in the knit 3, purl 3 pattern all the way around the contrast color till we get to the provisional loop we made on the other side. Okay, and here you can see I've been working diligently with my purl 3, knit 3 on the wrong side to work all the way back around with the contrast color to the point where we made the provisional loop. I have taken advantage of this nice slippable loop a couple of times to pull a little bit extra yarn whenever I needed it. You can see these came apart a little, but that's okay. We're going to snug them back together. I'm going to do my last 3 knit stitches here. And here's where the instruction gently snug provisional loop comes in. First, I'm going to make sure that there are no yarns, other colors stuck inside this loop. It looks like my main color is not stuck in there. There are no other colors stuck in there. The reason you do that is because once you snug it, it's going to be like a regular stitch, and so you don't want to have extra threads stuck in those regular stitches. So I have my 2 works together. I have the provisional loop I made later, and I'm just going to pull that until they stay closed. And as you work this throughout the pattern, you'll have a row working your way up of provisional loops that connect one side, and then on the other side you'll have all the spots where you laid your main color over your contrast color when you switched, or your contrast color over your main color. Now that we've gently snugged the provisional loop, we turn again. We're going to work all the way back around to the beginning, and at that point I will have worked 2 full rounds of this Intarsia pattern. So I'm going to head back, working my purl 3, knit 3 pattern in the contrast color. And here you see I'm working my last few stitches. I've come all the way back around with that contrast color, back to where we started the main color. And here I have 2 full rows of a main color and a contrast color with some tails hanging back. So I'm going to show this one more time so you can see what we do to loop on both ends to make the Intarsia stick together, and to demonstrate the make provisional loop one more time. So here I just finished working my contrast color, so I'm going to lay that color over the working yarn for the main color, again, to lock these together. This isn't the same as making a provisional loop because I'm not leaving a slippable knot where it can be pulled to make more yarn for later use. I'm just laying it over to make one tight knot, or one tight lock there. Here I'll work my knit 3, purl 3 to the end of my short main color row. I've made it to the end of the main color section. Here you'll see I have just my main color. There's no contrast color to pick up, so this is where we do make provisional loop. I take my contrast color yarn, have my working yarn, I lay it over my working yarn. So I'll show it from this angle because you turn first. Turn, take my contrast color yarn, I lay it over the working yarn so that it makes sort of a big loop. This is the make provisional loop. And then I start knitting back in the opposite direction with my main color again. I'll knit a few of these stitches so you can see. Here, the contrast color yarn is locked right there, and I have, again, a slippable loop that I can use when I knit across the other direction. Okay, so I've knit back across just about my main color section. So now I have 2 full rows of that main color, and now I need to work my contrast color. I've made the provisional loop on the other end of the main color section, and so when I start to work this strand of contrast color, I'll first lay the main color over it because we need to lock that color in. Lay that over. Connects to my provisional loop so I can slip more yarn as I need it, and I'll start working all the way around in my knit purl 3 pattern back to the provisional loop. Okay, and you see once again I've worked in pattern all the way back around to my provisional loop. There are no other threads stuck in there, even though they try to be. I'm just going to pull that snug. This is the gently snug provisional loop section. These 2 colors are locked together now, and I'll work my way back around. What I want to show you is the finished project. So this technique, again, can be used anytime you want to have 2 or more colors, starting at the cuff or the bottom of a garment or a piece that you're working on. If you're using Intarsia in the round, it allows you to cast on both colors and link them together. This method, this technique that I've shown you to make the provisional loop, isn't something that you'll just use on the cuff. You'll use it all the way up the cowl, and as well as on the mitten. If you choose to make the mitten, it has the same stitch pattern. And it's worked the same no matter what. So you work your main color, you make the provisional loop and turn, you go back, you work here. This is where your working color was left with the contrast color. So you lay your main color over the contrast color, you work all the way around with your contrast color till you come to the provisional loop you made. You gently snug the provisional loop, you turn again, and you work back. So this is what I was talking about when I said you make 2 rows every time you work one of the Intarsia rounds, or the instructions, because you work first your main color, you make the provisional loop, you turn, you come back, you lock your colors together by laying the main color over the contrast color, you work all the way around the back, you come to the provisional loop, you snug the provisional loop to lock those 2 sides together, and then you work back around to the start where you have 2 full rows worked.